Welcome back, everyone, to Merge Conflict, your monopoly of a technical podcast. We're the only podcast to be. No, I'm just kidding. There's like we're never like if there was whatever is not a monopoly, that is us. We're just a nice little podcast, Frank, in which we like to talk about technology, app development, deep dives on color spaces, and a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm one of your hosts, James Bonsamino. With me, as always, the one, the only, the luxurious Frank Kruger. How's it going, buddy?
Boy, I can't wait to talk about color spaces for another 30 minutes. That'll be great. And I can't believe that there's two other dudes talking technology anywhere else. Aren't we original? I'm pretty sure we're original. Anyway, it's wonderful to be here in your monopolistic podcast. James, I'm glad you allowed me to join since you do have full control of this space. You have a monopoly on
editing the podcast,
because you even told me to show up and I totally ditched you. So I guess you don't even have a monopoly on my time. So what do you have a monopoly on?
Nothing. I guess, just the one that clicks the publish button at the end of the day. But we'll tell you this much. This is a beautiful ad-free podcast. This will be one of the rare podcasts in your podcast feed that doesn't have ads. If you are watching on YouTube, but we don't control YouTube, they'll probably put ads in it. That's not us. So we're not monetized yet. So we're making zero money off those ads. We're there. But let me tell you somebody who may be making a little less money soon because now I don't have an update to this story if things have changed. But things may have changed. If you listen to NPR, radio, things may have changed by the time we've listened to this. But as the time of us recording, our good friends at Epic, it's a little company. I don't know if you've heard of that. Tiny little game company. They make Forfight, I think is the name of the Forfighting.
Sparkle Shooter.
Dance
Shooter. I forget what it's called. Yep. Dance Party Shooter.
Buy your favorite hip hop and music artist skin and Marvel things and Lego things now, maybe. I don't know. I think Shaq is in the game. It's a game by Shaquille O'Neal. Fort Fight. Yeah.
I have to ring the Miguel bell early. Ding. Hello, Miguel. I'm about to say something you're not going to like. I'm actually a big fan of Tim Sweeney's. When I was a young developer, Tim Sweeney, is currently the CEO of Epic and is in the press and is making lots of tweets. And we're going to be talking about all that today. But I want to say from a programmer's perspective, Tim Sweeney is quite a hotshot programmer. And I've been a big follower of his ever since I was a little kid, decompiling Unreal and learning how it was architected. I really got into programming scripting languages because of the original Unreal script Tim Sweeney used to write on Flipcode, a game developers forum I used to hang out on all the time. And he taught me higher dimensional mathematics on Flipcode. So I've just been a big programmer nerd fan of Tim Sweeney. So it breaks my heart a little bit that we're going to be talking about his company and all that in the most sadly kind of boring context possible. Money. But hey, everyone, go look at the early 2000s, late 90s technical articles written by Tim Sweeney. They're fantastic.
And hey, Epic Games not only is iconic for the games that they put out, such as Fortnite and Rocket League, but obviously, like you said, Unreal Engine, obviously Unreal Tournament as well, but Unreal Engine, which, by the way, Halo Studios, which is the name of the new of the studios now that makes Halo, is now brought Halo to the Unreal Engine. I watched a whole documentary on that. It used to be 343 Industries and a bunch of other things. Now they've evolved. So very fascinating.
It's worth noting. They really are winning the game engine war at the moment. There's a lot of games that used to be on their own engines that are now being ported over to Unreal because it's kind of just where the industry is. Everyone's trained up on Unreal Engine. They have a lot of momentum behind them. Also, it's a pretty good engine. So they're big enough that they get to bring some not class action. They bring some very specific lawsuits against some very specifically large companies in California.
Yes. And I'm going to break down today. This is an ongoing, long-going lawsuit, which is Epic v. Google, in which, for all intents and purposes, Epic, the battle between Epic and Apple and Epic and Google go back to the to the days of Fortnite, in which Epic didn't really want to pay the 30% tax or the 15% tax or whatever it is. They wanted to launch and their game separately, and they wanted their own store, and there was all these restrictions, and they didn't want to use Apple or Google Play billing. They wanted to use their own billing system, and they're a big enough company. Fortnite makes billions of dollars, I don't know, every minute or so, I think, and they're, you know, I think from a high level, if I read what Tim and them reading, they're trying to fight for the users. That'd be us, right? You
Sure,
know,
I guess.
um,
Wait, who are the users? Are the users the end users? Is okay, so the end users, the people who
uh-huh.
are actually buying Fortnite and trying to purchase underpants or something in the game, whatever you do
And,
in that game.
them and the developers. I think that the
Yeah,
users in two factors for Epic, I think, is the end users, because they want the end users to have more choice, and they want developers to have more choice. And to them, they
right.
believe that the app stores, not the companies, but the app stores on these devices being locked down and having a lot of restrictions are a monopoly in their opinion, which is why they brought up these battles, which is very different than, like, the phones are so different than Linux, Mac, and Windows, which do have app stores, but you are free to really distribute applications in many different ways out there. And obviously, Android is in an interesting spot, because while you can actually launch an app store separately, like Amazon has done, there
Mhm.
is all sorts of restrictions. You can't use Google Play services. You can't use their billing. Developers have to submit their apps separately. It's a huge hurdle, right, to actually do that. And we saw Huawei, right, try to do that as
Mhm.
well. And it's possible. Tizen and Samsung trying to do this as well in their app stores. It's a battle. It's a ever losing battle, basically, which means they brought these fights. So this big lawsuit came down. This is the Epic v. Google ruling. Some big things. Let me run it down, and then we're going to run
Okay.
it back and inject our opinion on the specific things. We're not going to necessarily put
Speed
our
run.
opinion on the lawsuit, but I want to say here's the outcome of what
Oh.
happened. Epic wins the suit.
Mm.
Now, here's the first thing. Google effectively has to open up the Google Play App Store to the competitors for 3 years. Now, here's what that means. This is a trial run, which is fascinating. We'll come back to that. 3 years. Google has to distribute, first and foremost, rival third-party app stores within Google Play. So you can download app stores from inside app stores.
Mhm.
I actually
Crazy.
I actually don't. It's just an app at the end of the day.
I'm
Fascinating. I
starting
know.
one tomorrow.
Let's do it. But this is the kicker about that, is that now rival third-party app stores will have full access to the catalog of every app and game in the Google Play App Store, unless developers opt out of that. Okay?
Crazy
So
number 2.
so you as a developer have iCircuit in
Yep.
the Google Play Store. Now, when Epic, Amazon, whoever distributes their app store, people will be able to find your app through other app stores automatically. Kind of cool for an app developer in general. And since those apps can be downloaded and they'll take advantage of Google Play services and all that stuff, from my understanding. So that's like the big thing. But there's more, because one, starting on November 1st, which is 4 days before the election, and ending November 1st, 2027, Google must also stop requiring Google Play billing for apps distributed on the Google Play Store. That's fascinating. And no, I'm not rewriting in-app billing.
Oh, come on.
Nope, not doing it. Then you use your own billing. Oh, I mean,
We'll
that
get
means
to it.
people
We'll get to
people
it. I'll
yeah.
convince some people. I'll convince
Okay.
them.
Let Android developers tell users about other ways to pay from within the Play Store.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Give your money to James. That's what
Yes.
I'll tell people.
Let's example your Netflix. You
Mhm.
also could sign people up through their website. That's an example. Let Android developers link to ways to download their apps outside of the Play Store. And they must let Android developers set their own prices for apps, irrespective of Play billing.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Fine.
I guess
Yeah. There's probably something in the contracts we all signed that
there's
just seems like a weird one, but okay.
there's most likely a thing that's like, hey, if you distribute on, I don't know, I
Yeah.
haven't looked at the thing
Right.
that I signed,
No one reads them.
but I assume as if you were, for example, to ship your app on Google Play, you're supposed to have the same prices on other
Yeah.
platforms. I assume that's
Apple
what that
has a
means.
similar rule.
I
Yeah.
think so. Also, here's another gotcha. So Google has to do those things, and they have to let Android, developers do that. But also, Google can no longer.
Hmm.
This is also a more extensive list.
Yeah.
They cannot share app revenue with any person or entity that distributes Android apps or plans to launch an app store or app platform. I don't know what that means. That's funky. I
I
don't really get it.
As far as I'm interpreting that because I think it's very poorly worded as Google can't give my sales numbers to other stores. In the
Got it.
same way they can list my apps, I don't think that they can distribute my numbers to those stores.
I think that
But
makes
that
sense.
seems
Yeah.
like a weird why would they spell that out? But whatever,
Yeah.
I'm not a lawyer. Let's keep going.
Uh,
Editorial later.
they cannot offer developers money or perks to launch their apps on the Play Store exclusively or first. That's
That's
really funky.
un-American. That's un-American. We'll get to
That's
it. No
a lot.
editorial.
They are not allowed to offer developers money or perks not to launch their apps on rival app stores, which is the opposite of what Jester says. That's okay. Got it. Okay.
Extortion. I love
Yes.
extortion. Let's spell it out, people.
They are not allowed to offer device makers or carriers money or perks to pre-install the Play Store. Okay. So that's interesting.
That's just un-American also.
And they are
My version of sorry, go ahead.
and they're not allowed to do the opposite, which is offer device makers or carriers money or perks not to pre-install rival stores.
This is amazing. You've made it to the end of the list, and I just have to give my overall opinion. This is an amazing injunction. Who gave this judge this much power? Okay. I have so many feelings about this. We're just going to have to go all over the place. I just want to say, at a high level, this is not nothing. These are some serious changes, and it's just a circuit of Northern California or something like that. You told me, so we have no idea if this injunction will hold for very long. But November 1st is coming up soon,
Yeah.
and Google does operate in California, so they do have some legal obligations, even if this injunction doesn't hold up for very long. So I think it really is worth digging into here. I think some of it makes perfect sense. Some of it I think is way too overreaching. And other parts, look, I just gotta say, like, in an alternate universe where you started by saying phones are different from computers. In an alternate universe, they didn't have to be. It's just because Steve Jobs, that happened. Um, isn't it weird that a judge had to give us all these rights? Like, it used to be a free economy. You used to be able to sell whatever you wanted, however you wanted. These used to be our devices. You could put whatever you want on them. It's a little bit sad that we need a judge to come through and fight for our rights here. So a little bit, I think, of this as corrective, and a little bit of it, I think, of as overreaching. Let's get into it.
My assumption here is that this does align Android here more closely to what I experience on Mac or on Windows. And let me tell you why. When it comes to games, Epic being a game company, is because, yes, I can download many of my apps and many of my games through the Microsoft Store. Additionally, though, there is an Xbox kind of game thing. There's an Epic game store. There's a Blizzard game store. There's a EA game store. And there's all of these, they have their own ecosystems, right? Because they want their own billing, they want their own games, they want the exclusivity for what they have. So when I was a more intense gamer, more active gamer, I could easily have 5 or 6 app stores. I'm putting this in quotes here because app stores, they're game stores on my device. The difference here is that um that what they're doing on top of this is, I think that's the catalyst, right? Which is Epic wants to put the Epic Game Store on on the Google Play Store for people to download it, and they want to be able
Mhm.
to not have to use Google Play billing. They want to set down those stuff. I think that is a win in general. I think that is good because it does align just how other things work. It's going to make it more complex on them and all this other stuff. From a consumer's perspective, there's really no difference. Now there's the Epic Game Store just here. The difference is the billing part, right? Where before we had
Yeah.
this beautiful garden of like, hey, billing is one process. Now it's actually making it like everybody enters their credit card everywhere, right? Which I'm not a huge fan of. I just, got to pay some property taxes, and you're putting some credit cards into weird, funky websites, and like, just can't we all just use one nice system that like is great? Like, there's SaaS solutions for this. But, when I'm paying my irrigation person into this somewhere, unless you're putting credit card numbers anywhere.
Yeah.
So I think that perspective, like, that is good. On the flip of it, though, it does make that part from a consumer perspective a little more complicated. I think the weird part is, and there must be some reason for it, which is allowing all of the other apps available inside of that app store. Like, I guess is the thought that Epic would launch like an Epic phone, right? And then just it would have every app, so they wouldn't need to have Google Play on there, like the store. That's kind of weird, I guess, a little
I
funky.
think they don't want to launch a phone. That's the whole point. They
Yeah,
want the full integration without having to launch a phone because
yeah,
they could go the Samsung approach. The problem is then they have to write a Maps app, then they have to write a calendar app, then they have to write all these apps because they don't have the Play Store and all that. Y It's weird. I think in general, multiple app stores are an okay thing. It does
yeah,
feel a lot like how cable TV went. We were all paying a cable bill to now I pay for 20 different
yeah.
services or something like that. It feels a little bit like that, but hey, it's the modern world, like you said. You're just entering that credit card into everything, every form you see. So I don't okay. I have mixed feelings there. I see multiple stores as maybe less from the corporate perspective, but maybe the review process will be different, like this is never going to happen on Apple. So, but let me use Apple as my imaginary example. Wouldn't it be nice if there was a store on the iPhone that had a different review process than the App Store that would allow different kinds of things? That's never going to happen.
No,
But you can imagine that Epic will have different criteria for what they would allow onto their store. Games only it would be one, but maybe they would have their own review process or something like that with obviously their own store. So there's a lot of arguments for corporations wanting it, and there's a few arguments for being okay for developers. From a user's perspective, I gotta say it's probably mostly an annoyance having to enter
yeah,
your credit card into so many services.
yeah. I think that it. So I think this, if we look at it from a perspective of an app developer, then I think that it doesn't make as much sense. But if it makes coming from a game developer side, then I think that it does make more sense in some way. So, for example, it's like I could create a game that is on the Epic store, but not on the Google Play Store because Epic is taking 2% of my game
Sure. Right.
stuff instead of, something
Forgot
else,
to mention
basically.
that the revenue cut, yeah, can be very different, right?
Exactly. Which means that Epic could undercut the Google Play Store a whole bunch.
Which okay, I'm sorry. I just got sidetracked in my mind because I remembered back to one of the points that you brought up in the injunction that for these new stores, Google has to share their catalog with the
Yeah.
new stores. Uh, okay, fine. What happens when someone wants to download that app? Who's actually serving that app? Who's paying for that server? Like it gets weird because part of like, sorry to keep talking about Apple, but part of Apple's argument for their cut is, we're hosting this stuff. We're providing the servers, and we're providing the catalog. We're providing the search. These are the things we're providing: the automatic download service, the upload service. These are things we provide you. So I do wonder. This is where it's a little tricky when judges are making big decisions like this, because what does it mean to share the catalog? Like, would Epic have to not pay anything to just install apps off of Google servers?
That is a great question. Like I'm not really sure how that part works, right? Like if I'm in the Epic store and I download iCircuit because you didn't
Mm-hmm.
opt out of it
Yeah,
through the Google Play portal, then
so confusing.
where does it go? For
Yeah,
example, when there was the Amazon store for Android apps on Windows for WSA, pretty much what you did is you would submit your app in the Amazon store, and then
yeah,
there was a checkbox that said distribute this on Windows, and it would show up, which is nice. So it was an opt-in feature. This one, they're saying, hey, like you have to opt out, and every app is available everywhere. If it's in Google Play, then it's in any app store that is distributed on Google Play. Because if this was distributed on Google Play, then we have access to Google Play, and you have access to Google
mm-hmm.
Play, so you can just download from wherever. But that does make the question: is where and who is downloading that? Like, is there an API that the Google Play Store or the Epic Store, for example, if there is an Epic Store, is they have to like surface all the apps and it's searchable, and then there's a button, and then that button like calls a Google server to download it, and who does the updating, and do you update in both places? It gets a little funky. That one I think is a little funky. I see it makes sense in some regard if you are Amazon, for example, who had the Amazon App Store and they have the Kindle devices. Every developer
Mm-hmm.
has to use Amazon billing and this whole thing, and then they have to submit the app twice, and that's a big
Yeah,
hurdle to get over. So that really locks it down. But if I have the Epic Store, and which I downloaded from the Google Play Store, then what's going on there? Now, obviously, if there was a device that, and I decide as a user, I only want the Epic Store, which I can't see that being happening. Like, I don't see a world where it's like only one of those. Like on my Windows
yeah,
device today, I have a bunch of game stores and the Microsoft Store application. They all live cohesively there, and I go into one of those specific stores for specific things. So it's such a weird ask, I guess, that specific one. The other ones, I think letting Android developers tell users there's other way to pay. That sounds
sure.
great. To link to the other app stores to set prices,
Yep.
irrespective. That just seems great. Like, I always
Yeah.
thought it was weird that if you took, like, Netflix wanted to only, or to wanted to let people also subscribe to their website, they weren't allowed to, or whatever. You get boot. I mean, that has always been a funky thing, because you're taking the options from the user. The user ideally should have the option of going in and purchasing it directly through the device,
Yeah.
or going to the browser and signing up to do
And
XYZ.
And let's be clear, that was always a big corp Silicon Valley thing. Like, they're not making money on us little peasant folks selling, $100,000 worth of apps a year. That's not what that rule is there for. That rule is there for Amazon and Netflix and the
Yeah.
big companies. They just don't
Epic.
want those. Yeah, Epic. Steam. It's so
Yeah.
funny. We keep talking about games and we don't talk about the actual purple elephant in the room. Steam is the big thing, but
Yeah.
Steam's staying out of this one.
How many people right now have Steam running on their computer side by
Yeah.
side the Microsoft Store, side by
Yeah.
side the Epic Store? You know what I mean?
Now that we're talking about it, it doesn't sound so bad. I don't want 100 stores on my phone. Well, it's Apple. I'm not going to get 100 stores on my phone. I don't want 100 stores on my Mac. I can barely handle the fact that Steam is on my Mac too. But it's fine. It's fine. I wouldn't love a world where every company has their store. I just bought a car and
You
it's
know?
a Chevy, and they want me to buy Chevy apps for their through their Chevy app store. I'm just like, no, no, that's
Yeah.
ridiculous. Where's
Yeah.
CarPlay? Give me the walled garden of Apple, please. I'm not
Yeah.
downloading Chevy apps. I think that phase has come and gone. I don't think every company wants a store. anymore.
No.
I think in the same way, I used to have a joke, every company that became big enough just became a bank. You see it, it's a trend.
Yeah.
Eventually, they all just become banks. Um, I think app stores are kind of the new banks. It's just like eh, Steam makes a lot of money on Steam, or sorry, Valve. They don't make games anymore. They make Steam, and they make all their money off Steam. And it feels like Epic's just trying to be one of those. They're all just becoming banks. Anyway, side tangent over. Let's get back to the nitty gritty.
Yeah. I think that a lot of that stuff for a pure app developer like us makes a lot of sense. Like if, for example, you want to start creating iCircuit online and then you have a subscription and ways for people to pay there, it's going to make that easier. If you want to take Stripe
Yeah,
payments and manage your own subscriptions, great. If you
right.
want to, go for it. If you want that complexity, cool. And I could see services like Revenue Cat, for example, opting in, or Stripe
Mm,
doing this. Like I could see I could see some competition in the SaaS space where it's like, hey, use Revenue Cat will allow people to do XYZ, and different cuts and different things will sort of take place, and we'll manage the back end that you'll pay for, whatever, right? So you don't have to.
yeah, this one's actually a lot more practical for developers than it is. Like talking about, you and I are not going to start our own app stores,
No.
but we might implement our own service because we're programmers. We're web
Yeah.
programmers. We love writing authentication. It's our favorite thing to do.
It's my favorite.
So we can write a little thing and link to it and not deal with, say, Apple billing, or not deal with James's billing plugin or anything like that. Maybe we just want to write our own from scratch. This is something we've been begging for on Apple forever. Maybe someday we'll get. But this is definitely the easy win for developers. And like I said, this should have been canceled long ago. This is just for the big players. I don't know why they've been abusing us small folk with it too.
Yeah. Well, those are all positive. What about the things that Google can't do, such as
Oh my god.
offering developers money to put their apps first, or not apps first, or device makers install or not
I
install? How do you feel about this? This is a
I
weird
don't
one,
love
man.
this. I don't love this. Okay. We need to get back to first. I hate all of that, and I want to say why, but we got to state what the judge is actually doing here. It's a bit of an experiment.
Yeah.
The judge has deemed that currently it is an unfair competitive playground for people wanting to start their own stores. Therefore, for 3 years, they're going to implement these pretty tough rules, this injunction, these new rules, specifically to level the playing field so that other app stores can start up. This does have an end to it. After 3 years, these rules go away, and Google can go back to doing whatever the heck it wants to do.
Yeah.
This is purely just to bootstrap new stores and stuff like that. So, everyone, if you want to start your store, you got 3 years basically to do it with a level playing field and all that. So, given that mindset of the judge here, trying to level the playing field, the judge comes up with this idea. Google can't pay someone for an exclusive to be on only their store and not, say, on Epic's store. That seems awfully strange to me. I said it when you first spoke this rule because that just seems downright un-American. Paying for exclusives is a time-honored capitalist tradition. Look, I'm just putting it out there. If someone wants to give me 100 grand, I will write them an exclusive. I will sell it on your store and your store only. This is exclusives have always been a classic way to just bring up a small company,
Yeah.
like Sony does this constantly. Sony pays small studios for exclusives. This is Everyone does this. If you release any kind of new technology, you want to differentiate yourself from the pack, and you do that with exclusives.
Yeah.
And anyone who's intelligent is, unless you're like running Xbox and you forget to do this, you get exclusives for your platform.
Yeah.
And you get studios to sign on. So this one, I get leveling the playing field. I do. This just seems, I'm not going to say it, but un-American. It just seems un-American. Exclusives are in our DNA. It's like tipping. Exclusives should be allowed.
The question is, can other app stores not offer developers money to launch their apps exclusively? Like, it doesn't say. I can't
Oh, it's
find them.
just Google that
Just
can't. So
just
can someone else offer me an exclusive? That seems so unfair. I mean, they're trying to level the playing. I don't know.
yeah.
Golly, I'm glad I'm not into macroeconomics.
It's
And
a it's a tricky one. And coming from a game background, the time honored tradition of exclusives is just there. I think the
yeah,
slippery slope here, there's a lot of pros that I like for this. The slippery slope that this runs into, which is, does this now extend some way down the road that somebody could sue Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo and say, hey, I want to launch the Sony store on the Nintendo Switch?
good luck.
You know what I mean?
I think
Like, and then Nintendo would have to distribute the Sony store, like, because game. Now, here's the thing: is like, it is not unheard of, by the way, for uh Microsoft has put games on PlayStation and the Switch, and
mhm.
Sony, I think, has dabbled like a little bit. Like, they can do that at some point, right? And in fact, you think of the Microsoft and Xbox game studios, right? It's like so many studios now. Like, inherently, a lot of those games are multi platform. There are exclusives, right? But they are multi platform. And there's been little dabblings here and there of things happening, but it is going through their app stores, right? Like, they're like whatever the new next Call of Duty is going to be on the Sony PlayStation store, right? And then there's exclusives, and there's other times for other different games and all this other stuff, right? I don't have a lot of insight into all the intricacies. I don't have a PlayStation, so I don't actually know what's there, what's not. I can only know what's on my Xbox, game streaming, and then on my Nintendo Switch. But that's the only slippery slope. Is like, yes, it is for mobile devices, but how does it then interact with, like, your car? Does your GM car need to be able to distribute the Tesla app store? I'm just saying, it's a weird slippery slope in general.
Yeah, I don't know. You just baffled my brain. Okay, yeah, I don't know, man. You got me when you said something about a Nintendo being on a Sony. I'm like, no, no, the world would end before that happened. Like, so I think like they would close shop or something like that. I don't think we have a slippery slope in that regard. It, it's just the old, you wanna manage the economy, but you don't wanna overmanage it.
Yeah.
You need to leave incentives in the economy. We've learned through history that if you don't leave incentives in, people will either find naughty incentives or they'll just stop working. So
Yeah.
we have to keep capitalism alive by keeping that little thread of hope that we can all get an exclusive deal with Sony and cash out and write one game. I think that's what hurts me. I think I still have that idealistic American dream of someday just having that exclusive deal and just retiring. I don't
Yeah.
know. I think that's just why that one rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. So yeah, it's interesting to see, like, the exclusives kind of flow to and from different places, like where the games come. I don't know. I'm intrigued by it. Like, I do think it has a lot of other implications. Now, that all being said, is like, there's not an update to the Verge article that I've seen here. This is a
Mhm.
few weeks ago, but November's around the corner. But it doesn't mean that Google can't put an appeal and get a
Yeah,
stop on the injunction and not have to do this at all, right? So things can
takes
change,
time
but
though. Yeah.
and it may have already happened. I don't even know. There's no
Yeah.
update to this article, so I can't think it happened, but doesn't mean it can't by the time this podcast comes out or by the time you listen
Okay.
to it. But I think the more interesting part, whether these things happen or not, it is what parts of this actually should just have changed already, right? Or
Yeah.
what should
Yeah.
be allowed in these specific app store situations.
Right. And I think we covered that pretty well because, like I said, neither of us are really going to start app stores. So that's for the big players. That's not for the developers. The developer win here is the ability to not use their billing system and
Yeah.
to link off. That is a feature we've all wanted for the longest time. And it's one of those funny things where sometimes you can't pick the people who are going to defend your rights. I don't think I would have picked Epic and the way they've been handling themselves through all this to represent me. I don't think they exactly have me in mind when they're trying to improve their own situation. I think that they often say that they're out there defending small developers because that's a good thing. And the truth is, no one else out there really is. I don't know too many other companies bringing these kinds of cases against Google.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it does feel weird to be represented by someone you didn't pick. Like, oh, you're the one fighting for my rights, huh? Okay, great. So, yeah, some good things here. I love the linking outside of your apps to your own payment system. Love that. You and I should really start brainstorming on our own store. We have got 3 years to make it popular. And I think the rest of it is just anti-capitalist ramp. Just garbage.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's really, really interesting about this is that, Epic also had Epic v. Apple, and mostly Apple won that case, and that has come to a close. Now, there is one change, which is like Apple has made some changes into and around theoretically letting developers bypass the Apple payment system. And there's a bunch of sort of things happening around that, which we've discussed a little bit, but not as clear cut as what this is doing. And obviously the EU has other changes and restrictions that Apple made changes to in certain areas. So it's very fascinating that this is here, that went one way versus another way. Now, that being said, we have mentioned that Android itself as a install base globally is astronomic. And again, being the biggest operating system on mobile devices in the world has perhaps different implications for this judge compared to Apple and the App Store. So fascinating. So we'll see.
Yeah, it is. It's hard here in the United States. The iPhone is pretty popular, but I have to constantly remind myself that the rest of the world does basically run Android. Whether they're running Google, I am curious about because I would make a guess that most people in China are not running all the Google apps. I would guess that like a Samsung, by default, they want you using their ecosystem. Most of those big companies want you into their own ecosystem. So I'm sure they're all excited for this. I'm not sure if this even matters for them. Like, does this affect Samsung? This is almost like it's a different tier down. Those are the top players. This is more for the mid people.
I think, there is a Samsung App Store that is installed on Samsung phones, which means that they could serve up the other apps side by side and not have a weird sort of thing between it. But they'd still need Google Play and Google Play services and all that stuff on the device for the apps to work accordingly.
Can you download the Samsung Store on the Google Play Store?
Soon, probably, if this goes through.
Soon. Yeah, we'll see. I am curious if they'll do it.
Yeah. All right. Well, let us know your thoughts. Head over to YouTube, youtube.com/@mergeconflict.fm. You can watch us there. Of course, you can subscribe to the podcast. You can leave a comment there. You can leave it on the website. There's a little contact button. It'll email us and do all this stuff. You can tweet at Frank at Proclaim on Twitter, and you can find me I guess on the Merge Conflict FM YouTube page. That's about it. If you see me on the street, say hi, and that's about it. So that's going to do it for this week's interesting discussion on legal stuff. So until next week, money. I am James Montemagno.
And I'm Frank Kruger. Thanks for watching and listening.
Peace.